I scaled partially because of failure, right? I built a practice that I thought I wanted, but it wasn't aligned with me, and I was bored. And I needed to get out of my practices so that I can get into the practice I wanted to be in. I had to scale out to create residual income. So that's why I'm like spread all over the place. I also would consider myself neurodivergent in some ways, where I like to constantly be engaged in different things. My mind is very ADHD, something that I've suffered with growing up to this day. So I need to be scaled so that I'm constantly engaging my mind, because I see business as a creative endeavor. Basically, it's almost like an artistic expression, playing around and seeing how things work. But for the first person starting out, the first thing is you have to, I believe there's no scaling without congruence. And what I mean by congruence, which I write about in my book a lot, is everything has to be congruent with you as an individual.
Welcome to another episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. I'm your host, Omar Coverbatch of OmarCoverbatch.com. So excited for you to join in today. We have another amazing guest, and he is right down the block from me, which is shocking. I never seem to have anyone from New York actually jump on the show. It seems like everybody's from all over the place, and it's really good to connect with a neighbor. His name is Dr. Jordan Barber, and he's doing really amazing things. And I'm not going to even give him too much of an introduction. He's going to blow you away with his entire story. I know you're going to love this episode. He's really a fantastic guest. And you know how I get these fantastic guests is when you subscribe and go on iTunes, leave ratings and reviews, and that's how they know that this show's legit and I can get a great guest just like Dr. Barber, and he's going to really deliver today. So let's jump into the show. Hey, Dr. Barber, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Omar, I'm super happy to join you and talk today.
Yeah, no, likewise. So happy to have you. Like we said off air, very rare that I get a New Yorker for whatever reason. I have no idea why that works out, but it seems like all over the country, I get all these different guests, and someone in my backyard. I'm excited just to kick it with you.
I mean, you're definitely my first New Yorker as well. And like I was saying, maybe we're just too busy, stuck in that whole, hustle culture here.
Maybe. So thanks for taking the time to hang out with us today. And yeah, I think this episode is going to be great. I'm very interested in your origin story, and I did some research on you. And I think it's pretty fascinating what you're doing. Just tell us how you became a doctor of acupuncture, why you ended up in that lane, and just a little bit about, like I said, your origin story.
My origin story, we could talk forever, and I'm not even sure if it's that interesting, but, and I think like everyone comes to healthcare for a reason, right? And it's something I talk about in my book, is kind of like finding out what your purpose is. For me, I mean, I grew up as a punk rocker and in the underground music scene here in New York City and out on Long Island as well. I was always kind of an IT person, very kind of a geeky. I like the technical stuff, but I also like the, cyberpunk side of computers. When I grew up in the 90s, it was kind of like a place that you could tinker, hack, so to speak, pull things apart and figure things out, which really speaks to healthcare, is that deciphering of what's going on. So I was attracted to that, wound up in IT, had a really great short IT career. I wound up working in the financial district, went through 9/11. I was there that day. And I think that set off kind of some things. One, I noticed at 21 years old, my health was pretty much failing, which, you shouldn't fail at 21. Now, I was burning that candle at both ends, growing up the way I did. I was also like eating off of the food carts, as a New York City person. It was so convenient to just get those Jamaican beef patties and hot dogs and, and you think you're invincible in your 20s. Had a series of health issues, but with 9/11 happening and, it leaving a mark on me, I remember crossing the Brooklyn Bridge on foot, which I never did before. As New Yorkers, as you know, it's like we don't do the tourist things.
Not at all.
Like I've been in the Empire State Building, but I've never been to the top of the Empire State Building.
Well,
I was
same here. The same here.
Yeah, I was in a trade center all the time because it was literally next door to where I worked. And we'd go to Windows on the World, which was, the rooftop bar, which I was literally there that Friday before 9/11. But as I crossed the Brooklyn Bridge trying to escape Manhattan, I remember making a promise to myself that I'm like, I'm going to do something that matters. Because I grew up with a very deep kind of spiritual kind of belief system and background. And I was losing it working in a financial district.
Hmm.
Some really great kind of early mentors, but these were like Morgan Stanley, Lehman people, and they were, cutthroat, kind of American psycho-ish, mentality, which has its value, but it does not, help someone find their purpose by any means, right? It's the antithesis of connection.
Right.
From that, I started kind of trying to figure out and flailing how to fix myself and what did I really want to do with my life. When I was a punk rocker, 17-year-old punk rocker, I wanted to be a massage therapist and a tarot reader.
Really?
Which was a very eclectic thing, mostly because I was like reading tarot for people all the time in high school. And I just thought it was cool. Like, I mean, if you ask anyone who grew up with me, I was like reading constantly. Any party I was there, just reading because I thought it was fun. So I was like, oh, I want to do that for a career. And massage because being a techie, my back was always like a little funky and stuff, sitting in computers and everything. And for whatever reason, my insurance covered massage therapy, so like medical massage. So I was getting it and I saw the value of it. And I was like, this is great. What a great way to connect with people. Mm-hmm. So I wound up going back to school for massage therapy. But, I didn't really think about what that meant. Mm-hmm. In New York, it's a 2-year degree, where everywhere else it's like 600-hour online certification. So it was a good kind of like, you had to take anatomy and physiology, all these college level classes. So it was kind of like an early pre-med kind of background, pre-med, right? So from that, I realized I didn't know how to run a business and I didn't want to work in a spa.
Okay.
Right. Because I wanted to help people. Not that you're not helping people in a spa, but that just wasn't me. Like I was a punk rocker. I didn't want to sit there and listen to Enya all day and, rub essential oils on people. Also, as a man, it's one of the careers that there's a certain amount of disadvantage, of being a male massage therapist. So you had to build your own thing. So I started trying to build my own stuff. And I had a small practice, splitting space with a chiropractor. But it was very difficult. I had no clue what I was doing. I continued because I found my love in acupuncture and Eastern medicine and more integrative approaches. So I continued on into acupuncture school, wound up teaching massage school first and then eventually acupuncture. And then continuing to fail at practice because I didn't know I didn't know how to make money doing this. Mm-hmm. And, I'll spare all the steps right now, but through a series of multiple failures, I found out how to succeed. To the point now, at one point I had 9 practices. I now have 4 practices plus a boutique practice in Brooklyn. I'm a partner in a billing company where we also do consulting. And I teach part-time, several published papers, and speak everywhere. So, I definitely flipped that switch and figured out how to make it work. I do online tele-wellness. I don't call it telemedicine because, in the coaching world, you got to be careful of, licenses and scope of practice issues. Right. So, I could fill in all those gaps, but it was a journey of finding myself, lots of failure. And I write about it in my book of like, literally living in a 600 square foot apartment with one of my friends, barely making it, but I was happy I didn't want to give up doing what I was doing. I just was poor, right. And I went from making a lot of money in IT at a very young age to suddenly selling my BMW for a Honda And honestly, Honda's a great car, so I'm not knocking Honda. But, it was a readjustment hanging out, going to the Russian tea room and hanging out at Windows on the World, drinking, top shelf alcohol to, you know, barely affording water, right? It was a long journey. So,
No, it's definitely a very interesting one to see exactly how all this stuff transpired over the course of of your career or in careers actually, right? So I guess my first question would be something along the lines like you describe your practice now, or like basically how you're getting this money, and it seems like you're doing it in a variety of sources. As a health coach who's just started out, what do you think is their first step to establishing themselves in their practices?
well, first I would say scaling isn't for everyone.
Mhm.
I scaled partially because of failure, right? I built a practice that I thought I wanted, but it wasn't aligned with me, and I was bored.
Mm.
And I needed to get out of my practices so that I can get into the practice I wanted to be in. I had to scale out to create residual income. So that's why I'm like spread all over the place. I also would consider myself neurodivergent in some ways where I like to constantly be engaged in different things. My mind is very ADHD, something that I've suffered with growing up to this day. So I need to be scaled so that I'm constantly engaging my mind because I see business as a creative endeavor. Basically, it's almost like an artistic expression, playing around and seeing how things work. But for the first person starting out, the first thing is you have to I believe there's no scaling without congruence. And what I mean by congruence, which I write about in my book a lot, is everything has to be congruent with you as an individual. Emerson said, "Nete quaestiveris extra" in Latin, which basically means to seek within yourself for answers. You know, I'm a big fan of Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics. I believe finding out why you're doing this and what you want to do. You know, always you wind up what I talk about in my book, coaches coaching coaches, right? It's like some people get into coaching because they just think it's going to be an easy job. You know, it's not easy, especially when you want to help people and the ethical and moral dilemmas that come with assisting and being part of people has a strong value, part of their health. So this is not easy work. So you have to find out who you are as a practitioner and build the practice for who you are because people are going to be attracted to that authenticity.
Mhm.
And then when you speak from authenticity as opposed to speaking about the things you think people want to hear. What's the new trend? I don't know. It's allergy season right now, so we're going to talk about allergies, which I mean, everyone needs help for. I mean, pollen count today, I think, is like a 10 or 11 for tree pollen in New York. You could feel it in the back of your throat, even if you don't have allergies. Um, in my book, I talk about a vision exercise and something I got from one of my first early mentors in acupuncture, and I've adapted it, and it's something I still use to this day. Is essentially just sitting there and it's in my book in length, but I also have, if you go to realigningmedicine.com, which is my book's page, if you sign up there, you'll kind of get a PDF and it's in there in short form as well. But essentially envisioning the practice you want, or coaching practice that you want, a wellness practice. Who are the people? What do they look like? What does that engagement look like? Are you just meeting them and then you don't hear from them until the next appointment? Is there an ongoing thing? Are you leading people in groups? If it's an in-person practice, what does it look like? Because if your vision is to, let's say you did this vision exercise, and your vision, you see yourself, wearing robes, banging gongs, and burning incense, which is, a thing, right? Especially if it's more
Absolutely.
shamanistic oriented. But you wind up in a practice wearing a lab coat and it's high paced and busy. You may be making money, but you're miserable inside,
Yeah.
right? And growth without alignment equals burnout,
Right.
right? So that's what I would say is find out who you are and what you want to do, which I mean, that's a loaded question, who you are, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to know everything immediately, but what are you yearning for and build that, right? Because you're going to attract the people that you truly want to help at that point.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And it's a tough thing to do. people take their entire lives to try to figure out exactly who they are and what they want to do. But sometimes it's just a matter of, like you said, just sitting down and taking the time to let it come through, and that's at the end of the day is very effective.
But it gives you what, I use the term, and I'm sure I borrowed it from Tim Ferriss, but North Star, right? And I'm sure he borrowed it from somewhere else,
Mhm.
right? It gives you a navigational point. You don't have to have it perfect. And if you figure out who you are in a single sit down, God bless. I'm
Mhm.
still doing it constantly and
Right.
I'm constantly looking. But when you have a North Star, right, a direction of your practice, when you start looking at things like, oh, do I want to start doing lab testing or do I want to bring in whatever new thing or start selling supplements or whatever? Does that match with that North Star? Because it
Mhm.
may seem like a good thing and it might be a good revenue stream, but you run the risk of diversifying to the point that you can't move forward,
Right.
right? If you're moving in 10 directions at once, you have no directionality anymore.
Yeah.
So if it's aligned with your North Star, it's always moving in that same direction. So you can say no to things, which I think is when we're first starting out is so crucial, learning how to say no,
What's
right? Because you're saying yes because you're desperate for cash, which I write about at length in my book. I did that. I had FOMO. I saw someone doing something and I was like, I got to do that because it looks like they're making money. I realized I was copying failure because everyone seems like they're making money and half of them aren't.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But there's a guy I'm trying to. Of course, I forget his name now, but oh God, I wish I remembered his name. He's a super popular, super famous guy, and his advice actually is the complete opposite. Where he said in the beginning, yes to everything, and he thought that was the tactic for him to get exposure and this and that, the other. But I just find it overwhelming when you do that, and
So
so much more powerful. I'm gonna get his name. I'm gonna share it in the show
I
notes.
think I think the book is called Say Yes or something like that.
Yeah,
It's ringing a bell.
yeah, and I get conceptually, yeah, that's a great idea if you want to just try to create opportunities, but without that North Star, of course, like you said, your brain works a little different. You may be able to handle it. Most people, you can't do that,
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm able to handle it. I've wound up in places where I'm like, oh my God, I gotta quit everything. Right.
Okay.
So, and part of scaling is learning to create processes. Without my team, I would be lost, you know, um, that saying yes to everything that matches your North Star, go ahead.
Yeah.
Right. But saying no to everything that's wrong, because let's say you're trying to build an online coaching, you want to do one-on-one, functional medicine oriented stuff.
Mhm.
You know, sounds great. There's so many patients out there, but then you get an opportunity to align with some sort of company that's selling a product. And you're like, oh, this could be a good revenue stream because it's sharing, and I could start selling it without thinking, you're actually taking away from your primary purpose because instead of people booking consultations with you, they're now just going to buy that supplement that you said is really good for headaches. I'm making something up. Well, now you just missed out on a consultation for a $10, referral fee or whatever, I don't know the words right now. It's too early in the morning, but whatever fee that you get for selling the supplement. And now it's not necessarily in line. And then you're not actually helping people anymore. You're selling them a supplement as opposed to giving what we would say differential diagnosis, right? Figuring out what is the right thing for that person's headache. Maybe it's coffee. Maybe it's more coffee. Maybe it's less coffee. Maybe it's a certain herb, or maybe it's not that herb. It's a different herb, and that one herb that you're selling might not help them, right? So your North Star was really that you wanted to help people not sell supplements. And now you're actually taking away from them converting into a patient, which was what you wanted. Whereas conversely, you might just want to raise awareness on supplements and allow people to have personal agency and give them enough information to figure out the right supplement. In which case, now you're maybe like Dr. Berg selling a bunch of supplements, right? Or Dr. Josh Axe, right? You can't get a consultation with him, but there's so much information that you can kind of navigate your own path.
Mhm.
So in that case, saying no was the right thing. But if someone was able to say, hey, you want to join this collective where it's a great referral base for patients searching for practitioners, we'll say yes. It's
Mhm.
now aligned, right? I don't even know if that exists. Maybe we should create one, right? But so I don't disagree, but you have to say no to the things that are not aligned because it's not going to be authentic.
Mhm.
You're going to be miserable,
No,
you
no,
know?
makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense. So, what's your approach about telling a health coach to niche down, and how far should they go?
I mean, don't so there's a phrase in Catholicism, and I can't remember it, but it's where like you get over analytical about being like perfect in your belief systems and conduct. I think it's called scrupulous, right, or super scrupulous, right? You don't want to get too over analytical. Am I doing the right thing? That's called anxiety, right? You start with that vision of what you want. You start with an idea of what your North Star is. Put an asterisk, subject to change, without notice, right? Just like that, small fine print. You can change it at any time. Mine has changed forever. If I was still doing the same stuff I thought I wanted to do when I graduated, I would be broke and I would be miserable. I built a practice I didn't want to practice in. It's a very successful practice, but I was like, I'm bored,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it wasn't giving me the variety I wanted. So create that North Star and then start, and in my book, I have processes where each chapter is figuring out these things. What's congruent? How are you going to articulate it, right? How do you express it? And that means expressing in your byline, in your communication with people, in your social media, right? So that people hear that authenticity, but you're also speaking from a place of passion. You want to be speaking about this. I don't want to speak about allergies and actually write in my book that I was competing to doing allergy elimination treatments because everyone around me was doing it. And I thought I needed to do it too because I didn't have patience.
Mm-hmm.
And I was miserable doing it. It was so boring for me.
Right.
Another person would love doing it, but I didn't want to do it. Um, you know, so you speak from the stuff you're interested in, which is the same stuff you're consuming as far as content and books. So you have an endless way to communicate.
Right. Right.
Now you attract the people you want. And that's all congruent and it's in alignment with your North Star. And then you start seeing new things about yourself and how you're engaging with patients. And then you revisit your vision again. I didn't think about this. How do I engage this? How do I further refine it? Remember, that's that subject without change, without notice, right? You can always redefine yourself and grow, but it's a path of continued growth
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, for lack of a better term, throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks, which is what most of us do, including myself. I've done it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I would tell you, I've done it from a marketing perspective, and sometimes that works. If it's congruent, just throw stuff out there that matches you and see what tractions, and then grow upon that. Right? I could speak forever about growth and analytics and data and everything else, but you need to know where you're going.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think that a lot of people get paralyzed because the advice out there is niche down, be specific. That's how you separate yourself from everybody. And like you said, especially for myself, I have so many interests. So it was always difficult for me to just say, I'm just going to stay in this lane and carry on in this way. And it could be paralyzing to the health coach starting out because they feel like they have to just stick with and make a decision right there, and they're just not ready to do that. And look like you're describing, most people are right. There are competing interests in your life, and I could definitely see why, don't get stuck there. You know.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is like one thing is you're already niched down. You just don't know it.
Mm,
It's self-awareness. There's things you already love.
hmm
Do those things,
mm,
right? Learn how to articulate those things, right? You don't have to niche down. You don't have to find your niche. You might be like, well, I'm niched in several things. Personally, I mean, mine's across the board, but my doctoral focus was in pain. So I am a pain expert. I teach ortho and neuro at a graduate level. That's my thing. So in my boutique practice, we do pain. But pain could be menstrual pain, could be headaches, could be GI upset and pain, anything that's associated with pain. So I do spread out on what pain is, not just musculoskeletal, but online and in my telewellness practice, I do a much more functional integrative approach where I get to be more of the herbalist and I get to do more laboratory tests and I get to play around there. And that's a separate niche. Um, you know, you don't have to say, well, I only do pain because that's what I do and that's it,
mm,
right? But you get to articulate within those channels that, where you're seeing people and how you see them, your niche. I'm much more of a general practitioner in telewellness. And being a generalist is a niche,
mm.
right? It's fine. You go to the generalist when you say, I don't know what's going on.
Right.
That's my niche. I'll figure it out. And then at a certain point, I'm probably going to give you a referral. Okay, we've gotten you here. We figured it out. This one thing's remaining. You should see this guy or this person or this girl who is really good at SIBO. I'm pretty good at SIBO. I'm not going to lie. But, if I'm not doing well at it, I'm going to be like, this person's an expert at it. Let's go to them.
Right.
Right. I figured it out as the generalist. I got you to a stable point and now I refer you. And that's healthcare. Right. Whereas I need the experts to send out to. I'm the expert in pain, but online that doesn't translate, right? Because I need to really touch you and I need to do a lot of, physical things to work on the pain. There's certain things you could do online to cut down inflammation and everything else, but, pain is something that's done usually in person. So you know what you are, you just haven't figured it out yet. That's why I say seek inside, not outside.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I can't wait to check that PDF out and share that with the audience as well. I guess, one of the things that I know time is flying. I can't believe we're at almost our half hour mark already. But health coaches want to get clients. That's the key to a lot of their business. What suggestions would you give to a health coach who wants to get their client base just moving?
I'm how do I say this? I'm choosing my words. I declare my bias. I grew up as a punk rocker. I'm controversial. I always will be because I feel like when we shake things up, it causes us to think about things, right? So I spent just this weekend, I just launched my boutique practice in Brooklyn, which is a cash only practice focused on pain and dry needling. And specifically, we're looking at pelvic floor dysfunctions, super hyper niche, right? We're getting niche on top of niche, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I started just looking at competitive analysis, which step one, competitive analysis. So I started using a lot of tools. Now I have access to larger tools that are usually prohibitive, but you can pay people on Fiverr to do these analyses for you for like $20 because they have access to the tools and they'll do it for you. So I spent a lot of time in SEMrush, which is search engine marketing. It's a major software. And people aren't trying. Sorry, the end. My competitors in the area are not on social. And if you listen, Gary Vaynerchuk gave a talk, now it's probably about 4 months ago, where he said the future is social. Now he's been saying that since Vine back in the day.
Right.
The future is social, the end now. Search engine marketing is done. My ROI on search engine placement, right, paying for AdWords, is terrible now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not there. And if you go to Google, you're going to get Gemini giving you a response first. Right. And then you're going to get Google local. You should be in local if you're a local business. Right. That's the end. And you should be active on your local. Right. You should be getting your reviews. But if you're not, if you're an internet based, local is not going to help you. AI placement is the next place. AI placement is about media. It is about being out there on articles, making sure that your site ranks. Right? Creating content that makes sense, not just creating social media content, but blog related content and everything else. Finding out the areas that your competitors aren't writing about and making sure that they're in line with your North Star. Following your ranking, right? And SEMrush now even does ChatGPT ranking, which I don't rank at all right now. I'm very upset about that. But it's very hard for AI because AI is trying to say who's important. Who is speaking about this? If you are not speaking about this, you're not important. The end. And Gary is saying that you need to be on social. And he was giving a talk to, I think they were like oil burner people, service-based industry people, old school brick and mortar. And was basically, I have friends now that I ask them questions like, oh, what's going on with this restaurant? Is that a good place? They'll go on TikTok. I'm a Gen Xer, right? I'm 45. So while I grew up techie, I don't like social media. They go on TikTok to find out what's going on.
I know.
And, my last Disney trip went on TikTok to find out the new stuff that's going on there. And I'm like, oh, wow. And it was actually quite valuable. Or Instagram, right? You don't go on Google anymore. You just find a bunch of blogs. And if you do, it has to be high ranking blogs that are writing about this stuff. If you're not doing any of that, you are not going to succeed. The end. Most of the people, and I did a competitive analysis of the acupuncturists in Brooklyn and the Lower East Side because I got the L train that comes across. So it's, 9 minutes. So they're competitors. They're not trying. And the ones that are ranking are the ones that are trying. There's like two of them. And they're doing blogs. They're getting, in every search engine. They're making sure that, they have their appropriate keywords. Some of them are doing search engine marketing. Most of them are barely doing social,
Right.
barely. Or they're doing one channel, Instagram. Well, that's dumb because TikTok is huge, right?
Yeah.
Facebook sucks, but Facebook is still used by a certain generation.
It is. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're the disposable one. Because if you look at your market demographics, and I will say that most people aren't even looking at their demographics. Most people that are spending money, at least in my clinical practices, are over the age of 40 and are female,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, so that's people that will be on Instagram, maybe on TikTok, and are definitely Facebook, right? So you have to figure out Facebook Meta's ecosystem and how that plays into Instagram. It crosses, right? So you have to understand that. You have to be writing content. You have to be out there. You have to get on podcasts. You have to get out on something that speaks to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're not a person that wants to be on camera, then you need to be writing
Right.
and get on Medium, get on some larger traction to build your backlinks. Do a backlink search. People have none, or they have toxic backlinks, right? These are sites that are linking to you, right? And a toxic backlink is a site that shouldn't be linking to you. That's actually going to devalue your placement in Google.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're like, I don't know what he's talking about backlinks, that's what I mean that you're not trying. And I don't mean that negatively. It just means that you're not looking yet. You're like, why do I not have patients or clients? Because you ain't indexing. You don't exist,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sucks. But I rather hear the truth because right now my boutique barely exists. But I mean, I just opened it 2 weeks ago,
Right.
right?
Right.
So okay, no big deal. Now, how do I exist?
Right.
Right. So I have a plan, and I'm doing all organic right now. I'm not paying for placement. I'm not paying for search engine keywords. There might be a place where I'll start boosting posts on my social media when I think I have content that makes sense to convert. I'm also still saying first, I'm creating content to say what is engaging, what are the audiences interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I create more content down that line, providing it's congruent with me. And then I'll start boosting it with the appropriate radius and everything else. You have to do a data-driven practice. This is still a business,
Right.
right? This is what I say the early mentors from Morgan Stanley and Lehman talking about data, because we were in commercial real estate. Data is king, right? It's still a business at the end of the day. And if you're treating it like a hobby, you're going to have a hard time getting clients. And I don't mean that negatively. And I don't want to be like stern. I actually really, really care about this industry. And I really care about patients because the standard medical system is not helping people.
Right. Right.
And health coaches, functional medicine people are the people that can make impact on people's lives. I want people to succeed. So I'm urging people to try.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Try, please, please. I don't think you're competition with me because there's so many patients out there. I want a bunch of people out there ranking and indexing. Like that to me excites me.
Yeah.
Right. So, I know that sounded stern, but I mean that from like the bottom of my heart. Like, please, get out there, do it. Don't just think, as my mentor used to say, you don't just hang a shingle outside and expect the patients to come. Right. That day is long gone. There's no foot traffic on the internet. The foot traffic is being present.
Right. 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 No, listen, I think we needed that, So I'm glad that you were stern with us, and
I mean, I'm not stern with you. I'm not stern with anyone. I really want people to succeed. And it blew my mind even recently. This is New York City, where you think this is the hustle, and people are barely trying. I was searching for an herbalist for myself. I wanted to say like, oh, is there a local herbalist that I could see?
Mhm.
No one's ranking. It's terrible. And this is New York City.
Right. Right. Right.
So what?
It's just
Yeah,
I can say that people just don't know.
don't
They're not.
know. It's a new world. And that's what's exciting, though. You should be excited that you can use a medium that people aren't leveraging yet in your
Right.
industry to actually reach people that make change.
Yeah.
That's I mean, that amps me up. I don't know. That excites me.
Yeah.
So I
No.
would say my book talks a lot about this, but at the same time, just start following people on YouTube, on SEO, on SEM, on all these different things, and just start becoming conversant in it because this is the language of your industry, whether you like it or not.
Right.
You're a business owner,
Yeah.
you
No,
know?
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Listen, Dr. Barber, you've been fantastic. Please tell us where we can get this book and, just keep up with all the good things you're doing and social media handles, website, anything that we can keep an eye on
So
and stuff.
yeah, my social media is J Barber LAC. LAC stands for licensed acupuncturist. You can find that anywhere, it's YouTube, TikTok, whatever. I'm more dominant on some channels than others. Then my book is called Realigning Medicine. You can get it wherever books are sold, ebook, paper, hardback, Amazon. If you're anti-Bezos, you can find it on Barnes and Noble, any of those places. Realigningmedicine.com as well is the book page. And my primary page is drjordanbarber.com, which you can find links to the book. I do coaching as well and my telewellness services. And then Dr. Barber Clinic, if you happen to be in New York and you have pain, you could find me in Brooklyn. So those are all my socials. And, reach out. I love questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Appreciate you jumping on the show. I got a lot out of it. I'm sure the audience is going to as well. So have a great rest of the day. Thanks for popping in early on the show.
Yeah, no, this is exciting. I'm amped up for the rest of the day now.
All
So
right.
with that fire, I'll probably write some content. It's been great, Omar. Thank you for having
All
me.
right. Thanks for jumping on. Hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. If you did, jump over to iTunes and leave a rating and or review. It goes a long way in helping get this message out to our fellow health coaches and people in our industry. Also, if you can, jump over to my website, omarcumberbatch.com, where I give out a lot of freebies, including my 5-day sugar challenge for people who are having issues with sugar. And also for health coaches, I have the book, Hidden. It's the 6 not so obvious ways to get your clients unstuck. Have a great day.